H-A-T. It's in the name.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast. That's what this is with Ben and Travis. And we're going to be talking about World Kindness Day, which is actually Monday, the day before this will air. But guess what? We need to be kind all the time. And we'll get right to that conversation after these important messages. This episode of the Helping Healing Humor with Ben and Travis podcast is presented by Faulkner University. Faulkner University is a private Christian liberal arts university based in Montgomery, Alabama, with a mission to provide an education anchored by not only intellect, but also character and service. The Faulkner experience aims to educate the whole person. Every individual matters every day. We all want to become better versions of ourselves. No one wants to remain trapped where they are because of missed opportunities and unrealized dreams. At Faulkner University, we believe your dreams don't have an expiration date. We understand that you're looking for more than a degree. You want to find your niche and thrive in your career. Whether you're a high school senior just beginning your trek or an adult student looking for a better path, Faulkner is here to help guide your journey. Go to faulkner.edu to apply or get more info. That's faulkner.edu. I'm Travis Creasy. That's All Pro counselor Ben Hayes with Three Chords Counseling in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. How are you, Ben?
I'm doing good today. I feel accomplished. Ran a few miles for the first time in a while. I probably will not feel accomplished in the morning. I'll probably not like myself very much when I try to get out of bed at 7 to go watch the state cross country meets at in Moulton. So I got 2 girls running in that. So that's pretty cool. So we'll know what the outcome of that was by the time the podcast releases. But anyway, trying to get ready for the big run in Memphis with St. Jude. So that's coming up in less than a month, and I am not prepared. How about you?
Well, interesting enough, I'll be up about that same time getting ready to run a 5K at 8 a.m. The Bellas Snowball here in Fayetteville, Tennessee. I'm on the board of Always Endure, which raises money to support cancer patients and those who are looking to adopt, which I have done both of those. So I guess I'm qualified. But I'll be running that in the morning. I have not ran 3.1 miles in my training. I biked on the bike. If you're watching the video that's right behind me last night for 30 minutes, I've also been working out as I've yet to see the voting change from me being Spider-Man to being Forrest Gump again. And well, I don't want to completely disgust everyone in the Spider-Man outfit. So I'm trying to get a little more fit. So I actually look like the character. So yeah, I'm in the midst of that training. It's crazy to think that's what 3 weeks, if that.
I don't even know if it's that. Well, I'll put it this way. I'm going to dress for the half marathon like a middle-aged man that should not be running a half marathon. That's the way I'm going to dress, because that's exactly what I'm going to be. But it's good. It's really cool what St. Jude does. So we're always super happy to support that. We will get back on Saturday night sometime. I'll preach on Sunday, and then sometime probably Monday, either Kenya and I or Kenya will head back up to St. Jude with Cypress for some checkups. So we got checkups all day Tuesday and Wednesday, like right after the run. So pretty cool.
Well, as Josh Thorne always says, it's always cool to run the race, feel accomplished, and then sit around and watch a little college football with some of my most nervous friends.
And it may be a real nerve. Is that SEC championship weekend too?
That would be SEC championship Saturday. 2 years ago, we watched Alabama beat Georgia in the SEC championship and beat the brakes off them, only to turn around and watch Alabama beat the number 1 Gonzaga in basketball. And that was about as fun as it got the rest of the year. I think we got it all out of the way. But anyways, and then, last year we watched what we thought was going to cost TCU their 4th spot and unfortunately, TCU lost and didn't move their back row, and so Alabama didn't get in. But we were thinking maybe they had. But anyways, it's always good. It's always great fellowship.
Never know.
Obviously, you listeners out there have shown tremendous kindness. Thanks to Riverside fundraiser, I hit my 4,000. Ben, you're on the birds, but you need a little help, right?
Yeah, I need some help. I'm at 32-ish. I think pushing 3,300. So I need about $700 to get there. So if anybody's out there listening and you're like, hey, I need to give to a good cause towards the end of the year and I want to help some people, then here's a way. We don't see any of it. It goes straight to St. Jude if you follow the links that we share, and it will go straight to help those kids and that great hospital.
So, I mean, that's a great transition to what we want to talk about on this episode, kindness. And it is because of the kindness of so many people who donate and sign up to run and make the event huge. And I'm talking, it is so cool because basically the whole town of Memphis is in on it, and people see you with your shirt on and with your stuff. And last year was Forrest Gump, people coming up, taking pictures and just having a good time raising money for a good thing. And so to see that big city over there really just buy in is a tremendous thing to witness.
Well, and just the thing, not only, right there at the start line and the finish line and, all of that, but I mean, like everywhere you go, you're running and there's cheering, there's people out on their balconies, and there's people throwing parties in their front yard and giving you stuff. And nobody needs a little more kindness than that guy dressed up like a middle-aged dude that doesn't need to be running 13 miles. And nobody needs kindness like that guy. And so, they're handing it out in support, in signs, and in all sorts of good food. I mean, like, sometimes handing out donuts, and who needs a donut while they're running, 13 miles, but I guess I do. So they're handing out donuts and all kinds of good stuff. So it's awesome.
So in the midst of the training, it's good to think about all the kindness. And, as we kind of get into the topic and conversation, I think it's always interesting to me in my mind. I don't know if it's just because I'm kind of different, or you may do this too. When I think of kindness, and I think about the Bible and I think about God, that usually for me doesn't come into play until Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. I don't really equate the kindness of God very much with the Old Testament. But I've been telling y'all, I think I've said it on the podcast, I've been like really into Deuteronomy over the last year and a half. And I just love, in the midst of all these rules and Moses basically retelling the rules with the background of being in the wilderness. And you get to Deuteronomy chapter 5 and he reiterates the 10 commandments. And he gets in there, and I think I had it here. And so verse 9, you shall not bow down to them, talking about idols, or serve them, for the Lord, I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children of the third and fourth generation of those who hate me. And there's an important word in verse 10, but showing steadfast love or kindness to thousands of those who love me and keep my commandments. And it's literally their thousandth generation. And so, yes, there's a punishment for sin and evil to the third and fourth. It has that consequence, that impact. We know people that people's decisions, 3 and 4 generations, are still impacting them, their legacy impact. But then he flips around and goes, but to those who love me, I want to show kindness to the thousandth. And so even in the midst of the Old Testament, even in Deuteronomy, amidst the 10 commandments, God is obsessed. And I think you go back to that word jealous is better translated impassioned. I am emotionally involved in a relationship and desiring you, and I want to be kind to you. I'm looking for ways to be kind to you. And so if God is looking for ways to be kind, even when in our mind we kind of make him out to be wrathful there in the Old Testament, if in the Old Testament he is looking for ways to be kind, what does that speak to us in the society and culture of consideration? I tend to believe we're in the most considerate age in the world, where people who, and to some degree rightfully so, people who are struggling, maybe in the minority, maybe in the lower percentage, we are considerate. We hear them out, we listen to them, and I guess some discussion could be made of maybe a little too much sometimes, and but ultimately that's a kind thing. We want to hear everyone, and to me that's a bold statement from God in Deuteronomy 5. Like, yes, I will punish and hold people accountable, but I really want to be kind.
Yeah, and hold on to your hat, Travis. You don't have one on, but Romans chapter 11. I know you love some Romans, but
Mhm.
behold the kindness and the severity of God. There's both of those things, and but he's all of it. He's everything, and so that, and then you go on over to probably my favorite chapter of Romans. I know yours is probably Romans 8, and it probably should be a lot of people's, but Romans chapter 12 is probably my favorite chapter. And it's all about ministry in that chapter. And it's all about what we do. It's kind of probably known for chapter, 12, 1 and 2, where, he's talking about giving up your bodies as living sacrifices, holy and acceptable. And then he eventually gets into the different, ministries that we have, the many members, the body has many members, they don't all have the same function. And then kind of as you get to the meat of that chapter, he really starts going into what is it that we do, how do we treat people? And so much of it could probably be summed up in just being kind, loving those who are around us, even when they're not kind to us, being devoted to one another in love, honoring one another, not lacking in zeal or spiritual fervor, but serving the Lord, being joyful, being patient, being faithful in prayer. I mean, all the things that we think about, like that, not only in the way that we treat the people we love, but even treating the people we don't love, the people who are hard to love, the people who are difficult. And he gives all sorts of instructions in Romans chapter 12, kind of about how we do that, and how, there's even one place where it says practicing hospitality. New Living Translation in verse 13 says, always be eager to practice hospitality. So, I guess, as we think about World Kindness Day, I mean, God so loved the world. He's really the one who started this. He's the one who showed that kindness first. I think John said it well, First John, we love because why? He first loved us. And so we sort of understand what kindness even means because of what God's done.
Oh yeah, I mean that's the word we're reading from. If God was seeking to punish us, he wouldn't have ever even sent us his word. He wouldn't have sent us his guidelines for human flourishing. That's really what the Bible is. What's the best possible way for humans to flourish, the best opportunity. And we all have circumstances in our life where we've tried to do what God has commanded us to do. I think Romans 12 also mentions that being at peace with everyone, as far as it depends on you, be at peace with
Yeah.
everyone. So there's things where we shoot to do what God tells us to do, and maybe somebody else isn't cooperating, or maybe in the action, Paul, once again, Romans 7, I know what I should do, but in my members, I see the opposite. And so if God was looking to punish us, he just wouldn't have even given us guidelines. If that was the end game, like, I want to punish these people, just don't tell us what to do and it'll be pretty easy. But instead, he
Yeah.
comes along and goes, I want them to know. Paul says, he winked at our ignorance, but now he calls us all to repentance. Well, if he calls us all to repentance and he doesn't tell us how to repent or what that looks like. So, yeah, I think even him reaching out to us is an act of kindness. And Ben, we may have talked about this on the last podcast, your aspect of your kindness to me sometimes is a measuring stick of how kids react to you. Like kids generally come in unless they have a traumatic background and they're looking for the kind of people. Um, Wednesday night, I mean, this just made my day. We were practicing for SWAT at Meridianville, and I didn't know that two of my students go to Meridianville. And Lonnie and I were walking down the steps, and this kid runs by and goes, "Oh, there's one of my favorite people." And I'm thinking, I'm standing next to Lonnie, right? So it's probably Lonnie Jones. And I don't know how he intimated that he was talking about me, but I was like, man, does that not make my day, right? That I've somehow fooled this kid that I'm a kind person and worthy of being deemed the coolest guy. But kids kind of reveal, if you're not a kind person, and then they reveal it in you. Like I think most kids cause a desire to be kind. I think you had spoken to something about getting on their level. Of course, I've heard you speak about 6 times in the last 2.5 weeks, so it could have been at any moment, but nonetheless, right?
It's being available. I said something about that. Yeah. And I think that's just the thing is like, do they know and where can they find the people that they can trust? And I think kids just have I guess not always, but you think about that whole sixth sense thing or whatever. I think there's just maybe it's the personality, maybe it's the faces that we make, maybe it's just something, but kids seem to kind of understand which people to be scared of sometimes. And I know that's not true all around the way, but it seems like you can watch kids interact with some people and it may just be the demeanor but it just seems like they can read sometimes into who it is, that they should, gravitate to or trust. And so I just think kindness makes a big difference in that. And I know that's not 100%, but I think a lot of times it has to do with just the way that people treat them. A soft face rather than somebody who carries a scowl around all the time. When they see somebody with a smile, they see somebody that looks like they're kind of positive and upbeat. They tend to gravitate that way. And so that's probably more of what it is than just a sixth sense, but it's just they seem to see it. And there's just some people that do that better than others. And so I would just say, sometimes it just has to do with body posture. It has to do with carrying a smile on your face, being aware of that. I think that's true with adults too, because you have people as adults, there's people who feel approachable to me and there's people who do not feel approachable. And, I want to be somebody that people feel like they can approach. And I'm not sure at what point that I've consciously decided that I would do that. But, it just, I try not to carry around a bitter face and a bitter attitude, even though I can struggle with that sometimes, at least when I'm around others, trying to be the encouraging attitude and encouraging face.
I think kindness is a choice. Much like most of life is a choice. And talking about being tired and going through and certainly tired and exhaustion can make being kind difficult. But it is one of those things that every day you kind of get up and you have to make the choice that I'm going to be kind today. And me, I'm a jokester. I'm going to kid around with you. I'm going to mess around with you. I mentioned SWAT, like you better not have really easily hurt feelings if you're going to hang out with skits with the truth, and it's all in good fun and we all have a good laugh. But when you're in a situation with a room full of people or a classroom like I am so much, man, I've learned that you just don't know what someone's going through, and what one simple act of kindness, and it may be a smile, it could be an encouraging word. But man, I've made a conscious effort, I guess, especially since my leukemia, to be that person, that if I haven't got anything good to say or kind to say, I'm going to really try not to say it. And that my sarcasm font and radar is very strong. And that's not always the best path to kindness.
So let me ask you this. Let's just be real practical about it, Travis. And I'm putting you on the spot, and I'm gonna put myself on the spot. So just let's think about some things. Let's brainstorm for people who are listening. What are some things this week that we can do to just show simple acts of kindness to people? Like, what are some things you think about? Like one or two that somebody random, not just us, but somebody's listening to the podcast that they could say, "Hey, here's something I can do this week that doesn't take a lot, that doesn't take a huge effort." What do you think would be some of those things that would make your day that maybe people can make someone else's day with?
I think the month gives it away, right? Thanksgiving. Just to tell someone, hey, I'm thankful for you. And not only having just, I'm thankful for you, but here's why.
Right.
I make our freshmen at Riverside do the 28 days of focused living. They do that in September with us in the Facebook group, and they do the most grateful Thanksgiving ever with us in the Facebook group for their freshman Bible grade. But really, about a month and a half ago, I just had my students start writing a sentence every day I'm thankful for and why. And you'd be amazed at just the behavior, not even the behavior. Behavior was never really bad, but their attitude is
Mhm.
different. And so I would say that maybe even just simple rattle off an email once a day this week to
Yeah.
someone that maybe you've never expressed your appreciation for them, a coworker, a colleague, family member, a cousin.
Well, a text message, an email, a phone call, a visit, just a visit, man. If you're, I mean, and not to get stray too far off what you said at first, because like today we had Veterans Day, and there were a lot of veterans who were there. Not as many as there have been, but it kind of broke my heart a little bit when they asked, for World War II veterans to stand, and I'm not sure we had one there. That generation, greatest generation, as we call them,
Yeah.
is becoming few and far between. There was one Korean vet, I believe, and then there were several Vietnam. But as they stood, I was kind of watching them and thinking, that's my dad's age. I can remember watching World War II veterans stand like in the age bracket that now our Vietnam vets are in. And I can remember those days and those guys that fought and did so much. So as they were leaving, I shook a couple of them's hand, that I recognized as having stood, and you could just see on their face that it meant a lot. That's people said thank you, and so that whole thank you thing is huge. But I think along that same line, that generation, if you want to make somebody's day, just show up and visit them. And I like yours about a call. I think sometimes just saying, I remember going to eat with some guys that was always their thing. And I try to do it when I go sometimes, and sometimes I forget, but waitress or waiter comes around, just asking them, hey, what can I pray about today? We're going to have a prayer for our food. So as we pray for our food, could we pray for you? And it might be at something like that, or just randomly, if in line somewhere, hey, what can I do to pray for you?
Any reminder, anything that you can do to remind yourself to reach out to people, to let them know you're thinking about them.
I think even just getting a cup of coffee for somebody, stopping by and grabbing something for your kids or for your wife, being at a sporting event that your kids aren't playing in, but somebody else's kids are, and being there and sitting with them and encouraging them. I don't get to do that as much as I'd like. I've tried to do that a couple of times this year, but with my kids playing, it seems like every night somewhere. But just simple things like that, where you show up to a eighth graders or even a 7-year-old's ball game, and you sit there and cheer for them, and it's a familiar face from church. It's a lot, and so just it doesn't have to be complicated. I think sometimes we make kindness and treating others with respect more complicated than it has to be.
This episode of Helping Healing Humor podcast with Ben and Travis is brought to you by Daisy's Place. In 2003, little Daisy was fighting for her life. Each time she went into ICU, Carolyn, her mom, had no place to put her things or rest. Do you have a story like mine? When your loved one is in the hospital, the last thing you need to worry about is a place to rest. Daisy's Place is a free place to stay in Florence, Alabama, while your loved ones need you the most. Daisy's Place needs you. Share your gifts as a volunteer, spread the word, donate, and sponsor to help serve others in their time of need. Go to daisysplace.org. That's DAISY-PLACE.org. Or give Carolyn a call at 256-629-6729. That's 256-629-6729.
You know what would make me feel appreciated is a jar of pickles, right? There's nothing, and there's nothing really like when the pickle jar is hard to open, and Whitney's like, "Hey, can you come in?" And I come in there, and I realize I have value and purpose, right? I can open a pickle jar, but as this is released on Tuesday, it is World Pickle Day, and I love a pickle bin. And your mom,
we're here to remind the people, okay, of the important things in life.
Yes, and your mom makes some really good pickles. I'm here for the dill pickles.
Oh yeah,
most of the time. We have a guy, our art teacher at school is Tom Dill, and so he gets the real dill or the dill pickle all the time. But I love me some dill pickle. I love me some dill pickle chips. I drink the pickle juice.
The juice
straight out of the jar. I don't know. You own that?
Don't they like freeze that now? Like at ball games, sometimes frozen pickle juice and stuff.
Brilliant, brilliant. So you dill pickle, you sweet pickle. What's your brand?
I mean, I pretty much all of the above. I mean, like my mom always made dill pickles, and they were phenomenal. She also did what we call bread and butter, which I think some call sweet pickle. She did those, and I could eat my weight in those as well. She pickled, beets. She pickled just about anything. There was a joke around our house that during the summertime, if you stood still long enough, she would probably mistake you for something to pickle. And so you would end up in a jar. So you gotta, you just gotta be ready. You gotta keep your head on a swivel. And so, but she, did like the little pepper jelly kind of thing, not pepper jelly, but the relish. She would make that. She would make the mustard relish. I mean, it was all that stuff. So all of the above for me. I will eat all of it. But I do, she's kind of slowed down that production. And so, we oftentimes will get other kinds. So what would your favorite other kind of pickle that's not made by mom or, which one? You go in like Wickle, Wahlberg's, Vlasic. I'm sure there's something else I'm forgetting.
I'm not a spicy guy. I'm not a spicy person, but I could tear up some Wickles pickles. And I actually reached out to them to be a sponsor of this podcast because I'd heard them sponsor an Alabama podcast that I listened to. And I was like, man, we need to get them because they're from Alabama. So anybody out there listening, if you got strings,
we need to try that again.
We'd love to have Wickles pickles on as a sponsor. I can't really remember the ones, but I guess the crunchier, the better. So Vlasic is nice. But yeah, I'm more of the louder noise it makes when you crunch into one, the better. But yeah, I think Wickles is top notch.
And I would go that's the deal with me. It's the deal.
Nice.
I have to go with, the kind of the crispy pickles. That's the big thing. If they're soggy, I'm just not a big fan. And so I always loved the little bitty ones. You get the jar of the little small ones because most of the time those have some powerful crunch to them. They get real big. They get kind of mushy sometimes. And so that's the biggest thing to me. And I love the spicy. I can eat that as well. But yeah, those would be the thing for me. So I never was a big sliced one. I like the whole pickle. Like, give me the whole thing. Slices.
Now, if I ain't got dill pickle chips and we got to go, a little not name brand, I guess, off brand, I'll just take some, regular salt chips and get me a little slice of the pickle, the little slices, stick them in there, and I got a little pickle sandwich with the chips.
Well, that brings up a whole nother thing. Who invented fried pickles?
Yeah,
because that guy deserves, a Nobel Peace Prize. World Kindness Day is right next to Pickle Day. That cannot, be. That had to have been planned. Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.